All right, folks, let's cut to the chase here. The Eagles are looking every bit like a team just limping to the finish, and the only reason they're going to survive is because they play inferior teams coming down the stretch. The Philadelphia Eagles lose to the Dallas Cowboys tonight, 33-13. How bad was it? Well, I can go through a laundry list of things that were bad in this game. First of all, the Eagles gave up 9 of the last 10 drives that they have faced, considering last week as well, with touchdowns. Dallas scored on 4 straight possessions with 3 touchdowns and a field goal in this game. The Eagles lost 3 fumbles by their playmakers, the quarterback and their 2 wide receivers who are responsible for really igniting the offense. They gave up the ball in Cowboys territory each time. They didn't score a TD. The offense did not score a touchdown. They've been outscored now 75-32 in their last 3 games. And I don't know what to say. Now, the only thing that is going to make this look good is that the Eagles can beat the rest of the teams in the division and still get a favorable seed. But right now, this looks like a team that is really struggling. Welcome to the Lehocky Eagles postgame show. I am Mike Missinelli with the crew, Mark Farzetta, Bill Colarulo, and, of course, Seth Joyner, the All-Pro. Fellas, we can look at this big picture-wise and say, boy, they're not very good. Or you can look at it like they played 2 pretty good teams and they weren't up to par, and their defense looks gassed right now for the rest of the season. So I don't know how it's going to work out for the rest of the season. So I guess the big question is the seeding even in peril for this team at this point?
I mean, I think it goes without question. It absolutely is. I mean, everybody wants them to get...
I'm talking about, forget number 1. The number 1 seed, I think, is out of the question.
Okay.
I'm talking about their place in the playoffs.
No, at this point, I just want them to make the playoffs. And obviously, I think they're going to do that. But I still want them to go after that number 1 seed. Obviously, it looks like a very difficult thing right now, next to impossible with the way everybody else seems to be playing. And this was supposed to be the game where you reestablished yourself as maybe not the best team, because you have to concede that right now to the 49ers, but at least the team that was still going to be in the driver's seat alone to be able to secure that top seed in the NFC. And they failed that test miserably. They're supposed to pass the test last week about being able to beat the 49ers. They came up small. They went up against a division rival, not just an NFC rival, but an NFC East rival, their biggest NFC East rival, and they choked it away again today. Another back-to-back, not only bad, but embarrassing performances. And one of the guys that I'm most disappointed in, Mike, is A.J. Brown. Because A.J. Brown, more so than any other Eagle in the locker room this week, talked more and more about how everybody else was trying to take what was on their plate. And today they allowed the Dallas Cowboys to come in and take their pork chop right off their plate. And they look like the team to beat right now in the NFC East.
I'm not even concerned about seeding at this point. I'm really concerned about this team. And we've been saying it for a couple of weeks now. Is this defense a championship defense? And we can blame the coaches all we want. We could talk about the play calling on offense because it was bad. But when you look at the personnel on this defense, it is not good enough. This isn't 1 game. It's not even 2 games. You got to go look at the last 6 games with this defense, and they have been historically bad. And that falls on Howie Roseman, not the coaches. Howie Roseman built this roster. We give him all the credit when this team does well. Well, he has to take the blame for ignoring the linebacker position, putting way too much hope in aging corners, and they are even weak and light at the edge rushing position. They lack a lot of young talent on that defense. Jalen Carter's good. The D tackles are good. Outside of that, they lack a lot of talent on defense, and that's my main concern. I'm not worried about seeding. I'm worried about this team and especially this defense.
Seth, I want to let you let loose.
Oh, I'm not going deep tonight. I'm just not. The truth is it's a bad football team. They fooled us. They fooled us through, 11 games into believing that they were really good, and they're just not. And that sits at the crux of it all. Today was the clincher for me because understanding what's at stake and how you played last week, there's no way that you can show up, and put that out what they just did there. It really does go beyond, just the players. When I see the way that our cornerbacks play and I see the way that our linebackers play, it's evident to me that there's coaching issues there because those players aren't fundamentally sound at either position. You know, when you watch James Bradbury flailing, you know, or Darius Slay running stride for stride with a guy, and then he feels the need to put his hands on the guy and gets a PI when you're step for step with him. Like, if I'm with a guy and I know I got him step for step, there's no need for me to grab him because I'm step for step with him. I know where he is. I can feel him with my body without me having to put my hands on him and getting a PI. See, but when you're out of position or you feel like you're beat, that's why guys get penalties. It's the same exact thing. When a guy's being pass rushed, when an offensive lineman is being pass rushed, and he knows he's beat, his instinct is to grab the guy because he knows he's beat. And why does he get beat? 9 times out of 10 because he's technically and fundamentally flawed. When I look at this defense, they're technically and fundamentally flawed at every position across the board, okay? And you're not fixing that in week 14 or week 15. There's no remedy for that. You work on those things in the offseason. You know, couple that with the fact that, you know, you primarily play a soft-style defense, which is bend but don't break, and you got Dak Prescott, this 5-step, 3-step dropping, and by the time his back foot hits the ground, that ball's out of his hands. So it's almost impossible to get any pressure, and then you can't stop the run. I mean, you flat out cannot stop the run. I don't give a damn if you're in a 4-man line, a 5-man line, which they had success with early in the year. They cannot stop the run. And when they can't stop the run, that puts added pressure on the back of the defense, on the offensive side of the ball. I've never seen a bunch of guys, you know, play the game so lacklusterish. Like A.J. Brown looked like he was disinterested all night, you know, and I just don't there's enough blame to go around everywhere, you know, and after losing to 2 of the best teams, not only in your conference, but in the whole National Football League, this football team is in trouble. They're in trouble because in the NFC right now, in my opinion, the only team that they may have a snowball's chance in hell of beating if they get into the playoffs is the Detroit Lions. That's the only team. The way that things are structured that they may face, that's the only team that they have a shot at beating, okay? And I'm almost to the point now where we look at the end of the schedule and we say, well, you know, we got these for sure wins. They might not beat the damn Giants. Right. They might not beat the Cardinals down the stretch. Listen, you laugh. Mike, you're laughing.
I'm
they're that bad.
The way you're saying it, I don't think that they will lose to the Giants.
No, you don't
Arizona.
think so.
I think the Seattle game all of a sudden becomes a little tougher than we originally thought. But here's the thing: if we look at it realistically, they played the 2 teams that are their contenders in the NFC, right? San Francisco and Dallas. They came up short against them.
No, Mike. No. We're not going to sit here and minimize it because
I'm not minimizing it. You haven't let me finish my point.
Wait a minute. We're not going to minimize it because we've been doing that with this football team all year long, okay? Because in Philadelphia, what the media and the fans don't want to do is they don't want to look at the deficiencies of the football team when the football team is doing well. So as long as they were undefeated, oh, you know, at least we're winning. The main thing is the main thing. We're winning, right? But no one wanted to talk about it. No one wanted to address the shortcomings of this football team when they were still winning games and when they got lucky and won games in overtime and got lucky and won games that they probably should have lost, okay? So now that things are coming full circle, we're not going to minimize, you know, the fact that they got their asses blown out the last 2 games, okay? It's not a matter of them not being able to handle. They got disgraced.
They did.
2 games in a row.
Here's what my point is. The scope of their deficiencies are measured against the 2 teams that we now know are better than them.
But
the 49ers and the Cowboys are better than them.
It's not just those 2 games, though.
It's irreparable.
But you got to look at what the project on where they could be at the end of the year.
Doesn't matter.
It does matter.
No, it
because
doesn't.
they're going to be in a playoff situation. You said the only team that they could possibly handle is Detroit. They're going to play Detroit in the playoffs. So it's all going to come down to whether we say they stink or not. It's all going to come down to them playing in the NFC title game at the 49ers.
You really-
what else could possibly happen?
In your heart of hearts, you believe that? Do you think if this football team keeps playing the way this played the last 2 weeks, who are they going to beat playing like that, Mike?
the rest of their schedule.
They are
Steph.
not beating the rest of their schedule playing the way that they're playing, turning the ball over the way that they turned it over, being as inept and inefficient on the offensive side of the ball, not being able to stop the run and not being able to stop the pass and not being able to get off the field in third down. Who the hell are they beating down the stretch playing the way that they're playing right now?
They are not a Super Bowl contender.
They beating nobody.
They are not a Super Bowl contender. But they're the Giants and the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, stop it. We know where it's going to. I know we're all angry about them losing today, but inevitably they're going to win those games the rest of their schedule.
Wait a minute, Arizona beat Dallas. Arizona beat the Dallas Cowboys.
Arizona's not going to beat the
Arizona put up over 200 yards rushing against the Dallas Cowboys. What do you think they're going to do to the Eagles defense?
Who did the Giants?
The Eagles are going to lose some games.
Didn't the Giants just beat somebody that they weren't supposed to beat recently?
Giants beat Tommy Cutlets beat somebody. Who was it? Tommy Cutlets. No,
Tommy Cutlets isn't beat the Eagles.
Mike, look, you could look at it through the lens of, hey, they played the 49ers and they played the Cowboys. Look at their last 6 games. They're averaging over 30 points against on defense. They're giving up an average of over 400 yards.
Bill,
it's not just the Niners and the Cowboys.
There is a weakness of the conference here. There are the only echelon teams are the 49ers, Cowboys, Eagles, and then Detroit's in the second tier.
Hey, Mike.
So what are we talking about?
But here's
Mike,
what bothers me the most.
You know what's in here? You know what's in here?
Whatever it is, it ain't strong
I've
enough.
been drinking it all damn year. I've been drinking.
Kool-Aid?
You know it says Kool-Aid. I ain't drinking it no damn more. Okay? I'm done with it. I'm not drinking it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not because you know what? My eyes knows what football looks like and how football should be played. Okay? My eyes know that. I've been around this game too damn long. So you can't tell me that the way that they're playing is repairable right now. It's not.
But you're not looking through the eyes of the Giants or the Arizona Cardinals or the Seahawks. That's what I'm saying.
Those teams believe that they can beat the Eagles right now.
All right, maybe they can.
Yeah, but the problem is look, like you said, we're not Super Bowl contenders. We didn't come into this season saying, hey, if we make the playoffs, that's a successful season.
Oh.
And I'm always positive, Mike. I'm like too positive about this Philadelphia Eagles team. Coming in tonight, I said we are going to learn a lot about this team. They were embarrassed last week, and they got embarrassed again on national television.
You learned they're not as good as the 49ers or the Cowboys. This is what you learned. Are they as good as the Lions?
It wasn't just
that they could beat the Lions.
But it wasn't just that they lost. Look at how they lost. They lost the turnover battle.
Bill,
they can't get off the field on third down.
I get it.
Bill,
they're not as good as the 49ers or the Cowboys. We can come to a conclusion on that, right?
Well, and now when you look back, hindsight being 2020, they almost lost to the Commanders. They lost to the Jets.
Who they almost lost to.
They're not.
Look at what they are now. The realistic part of this is they're not as good as the Niners or Cowboys. That has been decided with emphasis, right? Yeah. But now let's look at what the rest of the season. It's not like they're going to fall off the map and not make the playoffs.
That I agree with.
Okay.
Yeah, they will make the playoffs.
However, you also don't want to see a team. You also don't want to see the team limp into the playoffs. And Seth, I disagree. I don't think we have drank any ounce, and you especially. I don't think you've drank 1 ounce of Kool-Aid. You have called it as you've seen it all season long. And even though they have found the ways to win games, and they did that through 10 games this season and notch those victories, maybe 1 or 2 they actually controlled from start to finish. And a lot of that was thanks to the run game, by the way. You look at the rest of this season, and they were just finding ways to win, especially in the second half of games. They could scurry, they could scramble in the first half, and then just be able to pick up the pieces in the second half thanks to a big defensive play, big offensive play, and something that made up for a lot more mistakes that were covered over by the comeback in the second half. Now when you face those better teams like the 49ers, and God forbid I admit this, the Dallas Cowboys, especially after tonight, you do not belong on the same field as those teams going into the playoffs this year.
Farsi, they had me. They had me.
They had you fooled.
They had
you
me.
had me fooled then.
You want to know why? Because as they were winning these games and finding ways to win it, we hung on to, they're such a resilient team. They just find a way to win. How great is that that they can not do this and not do that and be deficient over here, yet they find a way to win the game, okay? And anybody in the media or any fans on social media that wanted to point towards the areas that they were deficient in, they got lambasted. Oh, you know, how can you talk bad? I mean, they're 10-1, they're 9-1, they're 8-0. You know, how can you when they're just winning games? Okay, and my football mind knows better. Okay, but I allowed myself to drink the Kool-Aid, like I said. I allowed myself to drink the Kool-Aid of resiliency and a team that just figures out a way to win, understanding and knowing full well that when you play against the better teams in the league, the nonsense that they were getting away with early in the season, that they were not going to get away with it against better defensive coordinators and better players and better overall football teams. It just was not going to happen, okay? So now my eyes are wide open. They're wide open, okay, because I can see the deficiencies in this team. On the defensive side of the ball, they can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. Players don't play with a sense of urgency. Even in a game like this, I'd see no urgency. Nobody wanted to come up and set the tone but a young rookie, Sidney Brown's the only one that wanted to come up and lay some wood on somebody. On the offensive side of the ball, they look listless. You know, the times where they couldn't run the ball, they ran the ball. The times where they just looked like they had no shot. You know, guys are being pushed around and knocked down without any fight back. This is a game of, you know, manhood. It's my manhood against yours, okay? And I'd be damned if I'm going to let you walk all over me without a fight. Did you see fight? I saw no fight. I saw no creativity on the defensive side of the ball. I saw no creativity on the offensive side of the ball. It's almost like Dallas's defense knew everything that we were doing, and they were right there. And the times where we did get fooled, they came with so much intensity and urgency for the football, they just knocked it out of our hands, you know?
The defense is getting their ass beat. I mean, let's face it. They gave up 400 yards today to the Dallas Cowboys. And you're right, Seth. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't stop the pass. Dallas
how many weeks in a row
balance.
is that, Bill? How many yards? What is that, 400 yards the last 6 weeks in a row?
They're averaging. I don't know if every team's put up over 400, but they are averaging over 400 yards against in the last 6 games.
Defense is gassed.
And over 30
they're
points.
gassed and they're inferior. And we can see that, and we feared that. Seth, here's the thing. They were resilient because they were winning those games. It maybe didn't speak to their overall strength against the Cowboys or 49ers, but they were winning games that way. Only question that we had to answer as we come to this part of the season is, were they as good as those other two teams? Forget about Detroit. 49ers, Dallas. We found that they weren't. But when we project the playoffs now, if you think that they can lose their way out of the number 2 seed, do you believe that, Farzi? They can lose their way out of the number 2 seed?
I believe you keep turning the football over at the rate they're turning the football over, you're going to be losing to Tommy Cutlets in New York. So it could absolutely happen. I don't believe that it will.
Okay. So in that case, if they don't, they get the 2nd seed. The first game will be against a team like the Packers. The second game will be against the Lions. The Cowboys have a harder way to go. They have to play the 49ers in the second round. So forget about the Cowboys. So what it comes down to is that the Eagles still very clearly could go to an NFC title game, but they're not going to win it because it's in San Francisco.
That's certainly
the story. Let's close the show. Good night, everybody. That's the bottom line.
That's very true. That could absolutely be the way that it plays out. The one thing that I'll fall back on is that I don't believe the Eagles will keep turning the football over at the rate they're turning the football over. I don't think you're going to continue to see Jalen Hurts turn the football over and fumble the football. I don't think you're going to see as many play calls for Jalen Hurts to run quarterback draws like it's supposed to be the staple and the only go-to thing on this offense, the amount of times they go to it in this game in particular. But then you see a guy like A.J. Brown fumble the football and Devontae Smith not be able to protect the football. You see Devontae Smith not be able to not lay out for a football in the end zone with an opportunity to try to change the tide of that game. A.J. Brown, the same type of thing twice in the first half. If there was supposed to be some sense of urgency going into this game, it was non-existent. So if you're looking at the playoff scenario and any idea of a sense of urgency about where their seeding could be or potentially proving to everybody else they could be better than what we think they are right now,
I have
few and far between.
I have no delusions about this team now. This is the one thing that this game proved to me. I don't have any delusions that they're somehow some kind of a Super Bowl contender, because I don't believe they are when you compare them to the two teams in this conference that are clearly better than them. But it's not like they're not going to be in the playoffs, and it's not like they're not going to win a first-round game in the playoffs, unless you think they can lose to Seattle and somebody else coming down the stretch of the season, Bill.
At this point, and I'm not just trying to be negative, I try to find the positive. The way they are playing, they could lose to anyone, Mike. They cannot. What they were doing well in the beginning of the season, even when the offense wasn't firing on all cylinders, even when the defense was struggling against the pass, we could at least fall back on the fact that they could stop the run. For some reason, this team can no longer stop the run. The last 4 games, they've given up over 130 yards on the ground in each game. Like, if you can't stop the run and you can't stop the pass, you're not going to be able to beat anybody in this league, man. That's the reason they were able to win the games they were able to win early. They could at least shut down the run, and they could still find ways to win. Now, they can't do anything right.
Can they lose more games the rest of the season than the Cowboys? Because the Cowboys have a tough schedule.
I guess where we're debating here is where our bar is set for this team. I know every Eagles fan in this city, our bar was not making the playoffs and winning one round.
You got to adjust your bar.
But the bar is set to go to the Super Bowl.
Forget the bar now. The bar has to be examined by your intelligence. You just saw them come up small against the 49ers in Dallas. How could you delude yourself into thinking that they're better than those two teams?
But I would say this. We're talking about Arizona and New York. There is a very strong possibility this team could go into Seattle, where we know it is tough to play, where the Philadelphia Eagles have struggled in the past in Seattle, and not win on Monday night. A back-to-back road game. Again, you're getting a team, well, has a little bit more rest. Seattle played at 4 o'clock, if we want to get technical. A little bit more rest. But, look, they're coming off of a tough loss. Who knows if Geno Smith plays? We were talking about this before we came on. Are they favorites in that game? I don't know.
They would have to. So you think they're capable of losing 3 in a row here?
Not going to lose 3 in a row, but we're also assuming.
Well, they lose 3 in a row. They lose.
Why not?
You're assuming Dallas
Seattle next week.
You're assuming Dallas is going to lose that many games. Yeah, Dallas has a tough schedule, but what we saw tonight and what we've seen so far this season, hate to say it, Dallas is a good football team.
Dallas going to lose 1 more game the rest of the year.
It's possible.
Okay, or the Eagles going to lose 1 more game the rest of the year.
Definitely possible.
Eagles still get the division.
Yes.
And the seed.
But
so that we come back to this, like we're sounding the alarms. Here's where they're going to land.
And then they still have to go to the playoffs and play either the Cowboys or the 49ers to get to a Super Bowl, which is where our bar is set. I don't care if they win 1 game in the playoffs. We want to go to the Super Bowl again.
Well, I hate to disappoint you. They're not beating the 49ers.
No, they're not.
All right.
That's why we're angry up here, Mike.
Okay. The answer is already out there. They're not going to San Francisco to win that game.
But look,
so lower the bar. The bar then has to be lowered.
But I think the reason why I'm so upset, and I think Seth is as well, this team has now been in 2 straight games. Not only did they lose the game, I would have been okay if they lost tonight. We knew they were in a tough spot against a tough team. It's how they played. Both games, they came out with 0 emotion, with 0 creativity on offense, 0 emotion from a tackling perspective on defense. You saw it again tonight. It's just the way they are playing that has me so frustrated.
I totally agree. And Seth, when they come out that way, does the coaching staff have to take the heat for that? Is that a coaching staff problem, or is it purely personnel-wise?
Nick Sirianni says, hey, this team, what happens on offense, defense, and special teams is a reflection of me. So what you see, he as the head coach has to assume that, because if a team is playing well, then yes, the coach can take credit for being able to motivate the team and get them ready for getting them ready to play. When you're making great adjustments like we saw early on in the season, the coach can take credit for that. But when you're not adjusting and the team comes out and plays lackluster with no energy, that falls on the head coach. That's the head coach's job, to make sure that the coordinators are making adjustments and doing what they have to do, that the position coaches are coaching the players, that the players are doing what they're supposed to do. I just think that, when you look at the secondary, there's a deficiency in how they play the game. That deficiency comes from, technique and fundamentals. When I look at the linebackers, it's the same thing. For weeks we've been looking at the linebackers and trying to figure out, do they know where they fit? They still don't know where they fit when the run If the run is coming to you, you got to fit. If the run's away from you, you got to fit. That goes for both players. Get there. Get there with aggression and get there quick so that you can take care of your gap and everybody along the line can take care of their gap. So when you're getting gashed like that, that tells me that you're either not getting there or you don't know where you're supposed to be, okay? Then when you look at the pass rush, you got guys that realize the urgency of getting there because they're not a high blitz team. So they know that the coaching staff is relying on them to get there. So then you got Josh Sweat going down inside and letting Dak Prescott outside. You got, Hassan Reddick taking an inside rush without communicating with the tackle to loop around, and all of a sudden you got Brock Purdy on the outside making plays on the outside. Now, instead of guys just doing their job, they're trying to do everything because they realize how important it is for them to be able to get pressure on the quarterback because those guys in the back are struggling to cover because they're technically flawed. Now, I'm not saying that in the minds of, the defensive line, they think that way. But as a player, I've been there before. It's like, man, those guys back there couldn't cover if you gave them a blanket and threw it over them. So we better hurry up and get there. Same thing up front. When your safeties and your cornerbacks are leading the team in tackles, that's not a good sign because the linebackers should be the guys that lead the team in tackles.
Let's take a breath because I want to talk more about this defensive thing. But right now, if you're looking to hire in the IT and engineering field, manufacturing or technology, all you got to do is contact our buddy Gary Kane and his team at Kane Partners and Staffing Solutions. Here's how you can connect.
Staffing is not easy, but that's what we do every day, all day. The key to our success is storytelling, asking the right questions to find the right people. I'm Gary Kane, president of Kane Partners. We want to be your staffing partner.
Alrighty, it is the Lehocky Eagles postgame show. I'm Mike Missinelli with the crew. Right here with Bill Colarulo and Mark Farzetta and Seth Joyner. And Derek Gunn will join us in our next segment. So let's talk about this defense. And a defense that really looks like they're flailing. And it looks like it's a bunch of parts that are just kind of taped in there. They're all disjointed parts. You had the wedge Roby in there. You had the wedge Byard in there. You've had the wedge linebackers in there. You played Keely Ringo today, and he made two penalties on one play. They don't look like they have any substance. Who's at fault? What has happened to this defense, guys?
I think a lot of it just goes down to coaching. And it's the same style that we have seen even last year with Jonathan Gannon. They were able to get home and get sacks, obviously, last year, which caused a lot of havoc in the backfield. But this year it's a lot of the same thing. You're seeing a lot of off-the-ball stuff. You're seeing a lot of off the line of scrimmage. You're seeing a lot of guys give that cushion defensively. And the lack of tackling from Nicholas Morrow. I saw LaShawn McCoy tweet out during the game today. How is 41 even still in the NFL? How is he in the NFL at all? And when you see a lack of tackling like that, even if you do get to the right spot to make a play, they blow that opportunity to make a play. And one of the times they actually dialed up a blitz on a 3rd and 5 that the Cowboys had, they sent 2 blitzing linebackers, and it was Dak Prescott with the rush in his face, stood up and delivered the ball right over Sidney Brown's hand to Ferguson, the tight end, and it was picture perfect. And he was able to carry it another 20 yards for the first down, or for extra yards after the first down. And it's just that type of tackling, that type of lack of execution that you continue to see over this last 2-week period with this Eagles team. And there has been times that we've seen it before the last 2 weeks. It's just that it's been the most exposed and gone to the most often over these last 2 weeks.
See, I disagree that that's coaching. I think at this point in these guys' career, you're in the NFL. You know how to tackle. That's will. That's effort. You look at the offensive side of the ball, I'm putting a lot of that on the coaching. The game plan, the play calling. On defense, yes, could Desai do a better job? Could Sirianni make him run a little bit different of a style of defense? I still think it's the personnel. I still think that Howie Roseman ignored the linebacker position. We all said it in the offseason that we were concerned about the linebacker position, and now you're seeing it right in front of you. Safeties, also not good enough. Look what Marcus Epps did today. Not that they played great. Knocked Justin Jefferson out of the game. This was a guy who played, 97% of the snaps last year? TJ Edwards, 94% of the snaps last year? And I don't want to hear, oh, it's because they had to pay Jalen Hurts. Marcus Epps and TJ Edwards are not making a lot of money. You let those guys walk, and you tried to replace them with Nicholas Morrow, picking up Zach Cunningham off the street. They're just not good enough.
Leonard played for like 15 seconds in this game.
The
signed off the street this week.
The personnel on defense, in my opinion, is not good enough to win a championship for this city.
Seth, personnel, coaching.
I think it's a combination of both. I think players will always be limited by the knowledge level of the coaches that coach them. I became a better player because I had good coaches. And when I had bad coaches, I had to lean upon the things that I learned from the good coaches way, way back. You understand what I'm saying? There was a point in time where the only thing that my position coach could do is hand me a game plan on Wednesday morning and leave me the hell alone the rest of the week. Because those little drills that he would put me through before practice every day, I could run those drills on my own. You know, coaching goes so far beyond just the X's and the O's. You know, if I got the running back out of the backfield man to man, it's one thing for you to tell me I got him. It's another thing for you to be able to coach me on how best to cover him and what the technique is that I should use. But when you throw a guy out there and say cover him man to man without giving him a toolbox, you know, to work from, then what's the point? So when I look at how flawed these players are, I don't see backpedaling. I don't see guys, you know, being in phase with wide receivers and then, you know, getting in position where you can put your back on them. Now you can turn and play the ball and see the ball. I see guys that are just straight up panicking because they feel like they're beat. And when you feel like you're beat, you're going to commit these silly fouls, you know, where if you were technically sound, you would have the confidence to cover the guy and not have to be grabbing on him or pulling on him, you know. So it's a combination of both. Because, you know, Bill, you can talk about at this level where guys should be. That's true. But when you get into the season, the problem is you don't work on technique and fundamentals anymore because everything is about scheme and game plan, you know, and what the numbers say that you should do. You know, so when they got to the bye week, I always say that's the perfect time, you know, to go back and freshen up, refresh yourself on, you know, the technique and fundamentals that may have went wayward since training camp. You know, and I used to take a day of the week where I would spend an extra 30 minutes after practice by myself and just work on the little small details, you know, once a week so that I could keep my fundamentals and my technique fresh. You know, you're not going to tell me that these guys, you know, have great technique when I see these DBs line up in press coverage and then open the gate and let the guy run by. If I'm going to get up in your face, I'm going to put my damn hands on you. If not, then get your ass back so the guy can't just run by you. But if you're going to get up a yard off of him and then open the gate and let him run by and he runs a damn 4.3 and you run a damn 4.5, what the hell you think's going to happen?
All right, listen. Let's track on what happened in this game, first of all, because I'm looking at the Eagles' most creative play in this game today, and it happened to be a fake punt. and it got them close. It got them 3 points on that drive, right? So the Cowboys get the kickoff, and they go right down the field. 3 for 3 on third down in that drive. They score immediately in the red zone. They're up 7-0. And this is where the Eagles start driving. They actually started the game with a couple of runs. And it looked like their offense had a little balance to it, and then Hurts gives it away on a design run, which I thought they did too much of today, running him on design runs. I don't like to see it. They did it too much today. He fumbles. It was his 5th lost fumble of the year, his 15th turnover of the year. Dallas answers with a touchdown. The Eagles do get the fake punt to get them to 10-3, and then they give up another touchdown. And then the Eagles fail to get a touchdown after Parsons gets a big sack where he beats Lane Johnson. And so it's only 17-6. They only get a field goal out of that. And right before the half, the killer blow. Dak beats Bradbury. They get it to the one on a pass to Brandon Cooks, and then Gallup on a 1-yard pass to the TD. And it's 24-6 at halftime. And people are going, really? This is what this game was going to be for us? 24-6? So we'll pick it up there, and we have Derek Gunn's going to join us in our next segment. We haven't seen D. Gunn in a long time. The Eagles lose to the Dallas Cowboys today, 33-13. They have now given up 75 points in their last 2 games against the supreme teams in this conference, which to me is a measuring stick, and I think we can't kid ourselves anymore to think that they are as good as the 49ers and the Cowboys. It is the Pound of Hockey Eagles post-game show. We are live from Ocean Casino. A lot to go in this post-game show, so hang in there with us. Derek Gunn up next right here. We'll be back after this.